Thank you for joining this video series on learning to use Python to build AI applications with FastAPI. Today's challenge is to connect an SQL database to a LLM application. I already have some fake data for products in our database. It's using SQLite in this demonstration. We're going to extract the data with a query to SQL and then pump it to the LLM, which is in the cloud. We'll get the data back and we'll have the LLM analyze the product for sales, average price, make some recommendations on how to best expand our business. The database can be separated out to use PostgreSQL, although this tutorial does just show you SQLite. The admin panel is SQLAdmin, which is an open source panel for the models that connect to FastAPI. This is video 2 of the series on FastAPI. The first video got you through the setup of a stack that's using the open source FastAPI. We're calling it FastApp. This is just a stack of commonly used open source software to kind of give you a quick start. If you didn't go through the first video, we did use tools like UV and a bunch of other tools for Python, as well as it covered some of how to use Opman. FastApp does come with demos to show you how to use the authentication system and to get the database initialized. We're going to first destroy all the demos with opman.py demo destroy. UV run simply runs a virtual environment for Python to make sure that you're using all the dependencies that's specific to this one project. So the entire UV run Python is just this preamble that you need to make sure the Python that you're running is the version that has all the stuff installed. So the command for Opman is run server, and that just runs UVcorn in the background. But we should have a very basic server template. It's just a single page right now. And we're going to add some fake data to it eventually. Initially, there's no database, although there's an admin panel. You can log in by default admin at example.com and admin 321. There's an internal server error because right now we did not create the super user. So to create a user, we first need to create the database. And the command to create the super user is opman.py super user. And it creates the admin.example.com with the password admin123. A password of admin321 may also work. I think I need to go back and debug the login a bit more. So I'm going to log in as admin.example.com. And I'm actually logging in as admin321 because that's what I thought the password was. So this at this stage, this stack is for learning purposes right now. So I'm going to try to populate it with some fake data. So the fake data is products, and it's going to populate it with a sampling of different products. I'm going to run the server again with opmin.py run server. And now we have our products populated. We haven't populated the rest of the models, such as webinar registrants. I'm going to try something new and show the use of an AI to do code generation. I'm going to use something called Cursor, which I believe is the most popular of the AI tools to use within an editor. The editor is going to function like VS Code. And on the right-hand side, I have my cursor chat window. I'm giving it access to ai-demo.html, which is a template from the demo_assets folder, and also the chat service. The application stack is built on a set of services, and we're going to use the chat service. I'm going to write an English language description of the application changes that I want. So I'm telling Cursor to look in the demo_assets folder to use that as a reference and then put the changes in the root folder. So Cursor will need to create a new folder called templates, because we're using FastAPI Jinja 2 templates. And in there, it's going to need to create a new file called index.html. So if you haven't used Cursor extensively, there's agent mode, which I'm in right now, which can change the code. You can also set it to ask mode, where it can give you advice. So if you don't understand part of the code, you can ask Cursor to explain the code for you as a teaching or recommendation. So I'm going to make my prompt pretty short to see what happens. So Cursor is going to ask for permission to make this templates, and I'm going to just select run, and it automatically creates the templates folder for me. And it's going to create a chat page based on the demo example. It asks for permissions to make a folder called services, and that's where we're going to have the Python logic. Because I have the example scripts that it's following in a folder called demo_assets, it has this advantage to create a file structure that I'm already familiar with. So that's why the prompt can be relatively short. And it's starting to create the files that I'm going to use in the application. And it'll ask for permissions to create a static folder. The routing for FastAPI. After the AI makes the changes that it thinks it needs, it's going to run a set of tests on it. It's a really nice feature of the AI nowadays, including a curl to see whether the server is responding with the correct HTTP responses. And it'll give a summary of all the different changes that it made. At this stage, we need to add the open router API key to our .env file. The .env file is simply a file called .env.env env, like environment, and we have that in the root of our project folder. I'm going to ask the AI to look at the README because the README has an example of a .env, and to create a template .env for me. Because .env is in getIgnore, Cursor won't actually have access to it. So it's going to have to create a copy of the .env, and I will put that into .env myself manually. Make sure you don't accidentally add the .env or your secret keys to GitHub by accident. Remember that even if you do a git add and then git remove, once you commit it, it's in the git history. So if you accidentally add your key into git, make sure that you delete it entirely from the GitHub history. You can just search online for how to do that. So now I have a file called env.template. I'm going to move it into .env. Make sure you don't have a file that's going to be put up to GitHub again. I'm going to change the keys that I'm using in this tutorial after the tutorial is finished. The format of this .env file is also in the README. All right, with the code from the AI that it generated, let's give it a shot and we can test to see whether it's working or not. Because I'm using a tool called UV for Python, we have to run UV run Python opman.py, and then run server is the command to start the server. So the server should be started on port 8000, and it is. So it's working at a rudimentary level right now. Because we haven't changed the OpenAPI key, or sorry, the Open Router key yet, you won't actually be able to send it a command and get a response back from the LLM. We're using Open Router because it's cheaper than, let's say, OpenAI or Anthropic. And you can easily switch between different LLMs to have that right cost performance for you, including down to free. So you could use, if it's tight on cash, 0 as the credit limit, meaning that this would be a key that is completely free to use. So it will only have access to the free LLMs. The free LLMs have some pretty serious limitations as far as usage. So if you can even pay $1, it would be a lot, you'll get a lot more consistent performance from it. So on line 15 of the .env that the AI created for me from a template, I'm going to drop in my Open Router API key, and this has a 0 limit on it. So it will only, this key will only be able to use the free services. But if you add even $1 onto the account, and with the Llama LLM that I'm using, it will last you quite a long time. If you're not familiar with Open Router, the API is pretty similar to OpenAI. So you could switch to OpenAI if you wanted to for that brand recognition. Okay, let's give it a go here. And let's just, you can type anything. You could use it the same as ChatGPT or Claude. It's using a cheaper LLM. Oh, it appears to be working. And it's saying that if you are a Python developer building some AI applications, your job security is great. Everything's going great. It's growing very rapidly. You can get decent amounts of money, make a living, have hobbies. Everything's going good. And this is actually consistent with my view of what's going on in Silicon Valley as well too. At the moment, we just have a generic chat page with limited functionality. It does talk to the LLM. It will return a formatted streamed response, but you likely want to demo something that shows your creativity, what you want to do. So in this demonstration, we're going to modify the page so that it's a business-oriented application that talks to the database. And this is the primary point of this tutorial, would be of how to access data from the SQL database, pass it to the LLM, have the LLM give you a response based on the LLM's knowledge. There's no web search in this demonstration. There's still no chat history, but we are adding on this interesting key feature of being able to talk to the SQL database. And remember, the SQL database, even though it's SQLite, you can change the connector to be Postgres out in the cloud and have it be highly scalable. Also, this demonstration only does a limited query, meaning that it's going to grab all the contents of the database. So in production, you'll have to change the query to the SQL so that it's more specific to what you want. So inside of the .cursor/rules, which is in the root of the project, there are cursor rules. And you could change this, of course, if you want to, but just wanted to let you know that this rules file does exist. And it's pretty short right now. You can customize it. It just specifically tells Cursor to use the technology stack that FastAPI is providing as an opinionated framework. In the bottom panel of Cursor, we've started the development server again with UV run Python, opman run server. And let's take a look at the new site that we created here. So the AI is pretty good at making the base template for style, especially because it's using the style template that we've already developed for FastAPI. So I'm just referencing the existing style, and I'm telling the AI to try to emulate it so it's consistent with the rest of the pages of the site, and we can start building it up from here. Although the LLM is working, it's going to be talking about general product trends, not the specific products in our fake company. So to actually give it access to the specific fake products in our company, we're going to have to make some modifications to the Python code. So before that, I think it's a good time to do a git init, git add, and git commit, since we made so many changes to the application, and it's basically working right now with the LLM. The last step we'll have to do is to add the data from the database to that, and we're going to leverage the LLM, the AI in Cursor for help with that as well. So let's just commit this set of changes right now. We're going to only create a rudimentary prompt here for cursor. So it's going to connect to the products model that I know is there, and it's going to access the database and add the results of the SQL query. The query is going to be very simple. So it's going to grab all the elements of the database, but it's going to add the results of the query to the SQL to the input of the LLM. And I think like chaining the database to the LLM is a great skill. It's a great technique to use for much more sophisticated applications. When you can have the SQL database and maybe a vector database in the future, we'll cover that if there's interest. Storing the information that's fed to the LLM, and the LLMs also can store stuff into the databases as well too, like the responses. So we'll cover that in the future. So the product model here, I know it's there because I built it earlier. It has a dummy version of the product here, and also comes with a webinar, a webinar class that we're not actually including in this tutorial. So you could work with the AI to delete the webinar class since it's unused. And also in the admin configuration, you'd have to also delete it as well too. But nowadays the AI is pretty good at making these types of edits. I'd be very curious as to what you're using AI for in your development. Cursor wants to initialize the entire database, but I'm going to say no and skip this, because if you run this command with opman, it's going to create extra data for the webinars that we don't actually want in this demo. So it's going to run a test. So I did skip the suggestion from Cursor to run opman init, because I know that will populate the database with more test data than we want. So Cursor is running some test scripts that it wrote, and it's going to attempt to run the main.py. These are just tests that Cursor itself is writing for itself and running. In the server console, it looks like the query to the database has been successful, and the data is being sent to Cursor as part of the prompt that is sent to the LLM. At this point, we're getting an error, but the error is related to the Open Router API error, and that's because we have used the free API too much. So I'm going to go back into Open Router and change it. We're running into implementation of the free Open Router LLMs. This might be related to the key. I haven't looked into it too deeply as to what the actual limitations are. I switched over to a key and I added a $1 maximum spend on it. This completely resolved the problem. I think if there's money on the key and I set to their free LLM, I think it'll be better. But as I learn more about the Open Router limitations of the free API key, I'll give you further updates. However, this key does have $1 on it, and it appears to be working fine. Because FastAPI does pair FastAPI, the great open source project, with SQLModel, which is the same It's from the same company as FastAPI, as well as SQLAdmin. We can get an admin panel to look at the models without any additional work on our part. There's a registrants are still here. You can delete that later. We built a little tool called AlpineJS to help you delete certain types of data. This FastAPI is just for learning and for testing. And hopefully this will give you some ideas as to what you want to build for your own AI application. Again, this is a hobby of mine, and I'm quite interested in what your ideas are, what your views are about AI. I view it as a way to make the developer more powerful. I don't think it's ever going to replace the developer, because as you can see, the developer really has to control what the AI tool does.